My name is Natalie Monroe. I'm 30 years old, and up until last year I thought I was a pretty good judge of character. Turns out I wasn't. Not even close. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you ignored all the red flags, please, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this is the story of how my best friend stole my identity, and how I made sure her credit was destroyed in return. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because I was reheating leftover stir-fry in my tiny kitchen, standing there in my socks, scrolling through emails on one hand and stirring vegetables with the other. It was one of those quiet, gray afternoons where nothing feels urgent, but everything still hums beneath the surface. Then my phone buzzed. Notification from CreditWise. Your score has changed. At first, I didn't even flinch. I get alerts like that from time to time. Usually it's just a small fluctuation, a few points up or down, no big deal. I put the phone down and finished plating my food, sprinkled some sesame seeds over the top like a sad attempt at restaurant presentation, and sat down at the table. That's when I opened the app. Minus 47 points. My heart did this weird little hiccup, like it tripped over something. 47 points? That's not normal. I hadn't opened any new credit cards. I hadn't missed a payment. I hadn't even used my credit card in weeks, other than my Spotify subscription and the occasional grocery run. I told myself maybe it was a mistake. A reporting error, some random glitch. Then came the second notification. Loan approved. $25,000. I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds, like it might change if I looked hard enough. But it didn't. The words just sat there. Approved. $25,000. A cold, sick feeling started rising in my chest. I clicked into the alert and saw it was from a company I'd never heard of before. Capital Frontline Lending. A hard inquiry had been made, an application submitted, terms accepted, under my name. My first instinct was to think someone hacked my account, or maybe it was a phishing scam. But then I saw it. My address, my phone number, my employer's name, all listed correctly in the application summary. I hadn't submitted anything. I checked my email, frantic now. No confirmation message, no warnings, no suspicious logins. Nothing. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated for a second before answering. Hello? Good afternoon. Is this Miss Natalie Monroe? Yes? This is Sharon calling from Capital Frontline Lending. I just need to do a quick verification of some employment and mailing details you provided yesterday. Should only take a moment. I sat there, completely still. I didn't apply for any loan, I said slowly. There was a pause on the other end, a long one. I could hear faint typing, like someone clicking around on a keyboard. I see, she said finally. Her voice shifted, not panicked, but suddenly more formal. In that case, Miss Monroe, we may need to escalate this to our fraud department. My fingers were numb. I looked around my apartment like there was someone there to help me figure it out. But it was just me, my half-eaten food, and the sound of rain tapping the windows. Can you tell me when the application was submitted? I asked. She paused, again. According to our records, it was filed online yesterday afternoon at 3:16 p.m. I was at work then. I knew exactly where I was, on a Zoom call with my manager going over performance reviews. I hadn't even checked my personal email during that time. Did it come from my IP address? I'm not authorized to view that, but I can flag the account and initiate an internal review, she said. You'll receive a fraud investigation. Pack it within 48 hours. I thanked her, but I don't remember what else I said. I hung up and just sat there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, food gone cold on the plate. The thing was, I've always been careful. I never saved passwords in browsers. I used two-step verification for everything. I shredded my mail. I wasn't careless. So how? I spent the rest of the evening combing through every app, every bank account, every document on my laptop. Everything looked normal. No unfamiliar logins, no signs of tampering, until I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Job Stuff. Inside was a PDF titled Loan Application Final N. Monroe PDF. It hadn't been there last week. My stomach dropped. I clicked on it. The application was completely filled out, every field, even the signature, and it wasn't a fake one. It looked just like mine. That's when I noticed the file name, Loan Application Final N. Monroe.pdf. Not Natalie Monroe or N. Monroe or NM 2025, like I usually format things. I never save documents like that. And then, as I scanned the file properties, I saw the kicker. Last modified by S. Clarkson. It didn't mean much at first. I didn't know any S. Clarkson. But something about the name made my skin crawl. I couldn't let it go. I started Googling it obsessively, and after a few tries, there it was. Sierra Clarkson. My former roommate's best friend. My best friend, or at least she used to be. We'd grown up together. Same schools, same birthday parties, same shared lockers and matching Halloween costumes. We drifted in our 20s, the way people do, but never fully lost touch. We still texted from time to time, saw each other's updates. She even sent me a happy birthday text 2 months ago, with a bunch of nostalgic emojis. Now I couldn't stop staring at her name on that file. Could she really have? No, that didn't make sense. I mean, why? But then I remembered, 3 months ago, Sierra had asked me for help with her resume. She wanted to borrow my template. I'd sent it without thinking, along with a sample cover letter and some filler, job application data. She must have downloaded more than I realized. She must have taken everything, and that's when the anger started to simmer. Because this wasn't just some random identity theft. This wasn't a stranger behind a screen. This was someone I knew. Someone who had access. Someone who pretended to still care about me. And now she had $25,000 under my name. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was furious, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The next few days were a blur of emails, phone calls, and mild panic. Actually, no, not mild. It was the kind of panic that rides just beneath the skin, like static electricity, waiting to spark the moment you let your guard down. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that loan confirmation email, that fake signature, that name, S. Clarkson, hiding in my file history like a smirking shadow. Whoever applied for that loan had done their homework. They didn't just guess at my information. They had it all. My full legal name, my old address, down to the apartment, number, my actual social security number. That last one hit hardest. The fraud rep at Capital Frontline Lending sounded stunned when we went over the application line by line. "This doesn't look like a random phishing job," she said. She lowered her voice, like she didn't want to say it out loud. "This looks personal." Yeah, no kidding. It felt like being robbed, but not in the usual sense. Not like a break-in or a stolen purse. This was something else. It was like someone crawled into my life, put on my skin, and walked around pretending to be me. Violating the core of who I was. Quietly, precisely, I pulled my credit report. I knew I'd find the loan entry, but seeing it in black and white made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. Fast Track Financial. Opened 21 days ago. Funded in full. Already marked delinquent on the first payment. I felt physically sick. I didn't even know this was possible. I thought these things took months to resolve. But no, this loan had been taken out, spent, and ignored before I even knew it existed. And the worst part? It wasn't the only one. A second inquiry showed up under Riverline Lending, pending. Approval. Same name, same birth date, same employer. But this time, they used a phone number that wasn't mine. Almost mine. Off by 1 digit. It was like someone was evolving their impersonation of me in real time. I sat at my desk with a notebook, trying to make sense of it all, scribbling names, dates, and amounts like some amateur detective. Half of me wanted to go full revenge movie, break into Sierra's apartment, confront her, demand answers. The other half wanted to lie down in bed and pretend this wasn't happening. But neither of those options was going to fix this. Instead, I started small. First, I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus: Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. That was easy. Then I filed a police report online, cold, impersonal, and probably pointless. It felt like screaming into a void. Still, it was necessary to get the case number for the next step, reporting the fraud to the FTC. I thought that would make me feel safer. It didn't. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail addressed to Natalie Monroe, plain envelope. No return address. Inside, a welcome packet from Riverline Lending. The letter congratulated me on my pre-approval status and explained how to access the funds once the identity verification was complete. Attached was a barcode. Below it, it said, "Verify online or call us directly to complete the process." I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. That loan wasn't finalized yet. That meant it wasn't too late to intercept it. And that's when the shift happened, from panic to strategy. Because if this person was bold enough to keep applying for loans in my name, maybe I could turn the tables. Maybe I could trap them. But first I needed confirmation. Sierra Clarkson had always been clever. Too clever, honestly. The kind of person who knew how to slip past people unnoticed, how to bend rules without technically breaking them. She was also wildly impulsive, especially with money. That wasn't new. I remembered in college how she once applied for 3 credit cards in a week, just to max them out buying Coachella tickets and vintage leather boots she couldn't afford. But this was something else. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. A piece of the puzzle that made it all fit. I went through our old messages. Most were harmless. Memes, short check-ins, the occasional link to some BuzzFeed quiz. But 3 months ago, I found a string of texts I'd forgotten. About Sierra. "Hey, do you still have that resume you used for your marketing job?" The format was super clean. "Yeah. Hold on me. Attachment sent. Resume. Template. NM 2024. Docs. Sierra. Thank you. Lifesaver." That wasn't suspicious in itself. What was suspicious was what came next. Something I'd missed at the time. Sierra. Wait, what's that site you use to convert PDFs again? The one with no watermark? I hadn't thought twice about it then, but now, it felt like a breadcrumb. I checked my file sharing history on Google Drive. Sure enough, 5 documents had been accessed by her Gmail account that day, not just the resume template. There was a W-2 I'd saved from last tax season. A scanned copy of my driver's license I'd used to verify a remote work portal. Even a bank statement I'd uploaded by mistake and forgotten to delete. She had downloaded everything, and I had handed it to her. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. But not because of fear this time, because of planning. I was done playing defense. If she wanted to play games with my life, I was going to write the rules. There's something strange that happens when your fear finally hits a wall. It turns into clarity, and clarity can be dangerous. By Thursday night, I wasn't just suspicious of Sierra. I was sure. Not just because of the resume file. Not just because she had access to my drive. But because I knew her. Knew how she thought. Knew how she rationalized things. She was always the type to call herself a survivor, even when she was the one causing the damage. I did what I had to. It's not like I hurt anyone. You'd understand if you were in my shoes. No. She didn't need me to understand. She needed me to forget. But this time, I wasn't forgetting. I started digging. Not just into what she'd done, but how she'd done it. Identity theft leaves traces, digital ones. I just had to know where to look. I logged into my email and searched for Capital Frontline Lending. Nothing. Then Fast Track Financial. Still nothing. But when I searched Riverline, something odd came up. Not an email, but a password reset link. A request made from an IP address that wasn't mine. The browser log even gave a city, Santa Monica. I hadn't been to Santa Monica in over a year. Sierra, though? She lived there now. Moved last November after she got that temp job. She said it wasn't really a job, but paid cash under the table. I cross-referenced the date of the IP ping with our texts. Sure enough, on that same day, she had messaged me. Hey babe, wanna grab drinks next week? Miss your face. Classic Sierra. Distract, flatter, soften, while she was behind the scenes stealing pieces of me. I opened my Google Maps history. I hadn't disabled location sharing, and I doubted she had either. I clicked on Shared with Me. And there it was. Sierra Clarkson. Last seen, March 29th. Venice Beloved and Centinela Ave. Right in the heart of Santa Monica. Less than 2 blocks from a mail drop location I'd Googled earlier. The one Riverline Lending listed as alternative. Address verification on their form. She was getting bold. No one drove across LA just to pick up a package unless they needed it to disappear. Friday morning, I made a choice. No more reports. No more waiting for the fraud team to call me back. No more begging strangers behind glass screens to care about my stolen identity. This was personal, and personal meant I had to handle it my way. I started by calling in sick to work. Then I drove to Sierra's apartment. The gate code hadn't changed. Same digits she used for everything. 1989, her birth year. I didn't go inside. Not yet. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. She wasn't home. Probably off doing freelance creative consulting, which was code for sitting in cafes pretending to work while draining oat milk lattes on credit. Around noon, I walked around the block and checked the alley. Her building had one of those big blue recycling bins that overflowed every week, and Sierra, well, she wasn't exactly a careful shredder. I put on gloves, pulled my hoodie up, and started flipping. Most of it was junk. Food delivery menus, subscription boxes, glossy catalogs. But then I found it. A torn envelope with Fast Track Financial on the return label. Inside, a crumpled piece of paper, account summary, account holder, Natalie Monroe. She hadn't even bothered to remove my name before tossing it. I stared at the page for a long time, hands shaking. There it was. Proof. Not just suspicion, not just a hunch. Proof. I took photos of everything. Every torn edge, every barcode, every mailing address. Then I left. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. She'd used my info for at least 2 loans. Probably more. What if she'd done this to someone else before me? I opened LinkedIn and searched her profile. It was private now. Of course it was. But in her old posts, she'd tagged 2 girls I vaguely remembered from her college days, Alicia and Camille. Both from her freshman dorm. I messaged them. Simple. Direct. Hi. This is probably a strange question. But did Sierra ever ask you to borrow personal documents? I'm dealing with identity fraud and trying to connect dots. Any help would be appreciated. Alicia replied the next day. OMG, yes. She used my name for a credit card once in 2019. Claimed it was an honest mix-up, but I didn't find out until I was denied for an apartment. Never spoke to her again. Camille didn't reply. But that was enough. This was a pattern. Sierra wasn't just impulsive. She was a serial identity thief. And no one had ever stopped her. Until now. I spent the weekend building a dossier. Every email, every screenshot, the torn-up mail, the IP logs, Alicia's message. I printed everything, put it in a folder, labeled it in Sharpie, Sierra Clarkson. Fraud case 001. It felt ridiculous and cinematic, but also necessary. Like I needed to hold the weight of what she did in my hands before I could let it go. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not in person. Not until I could burn the bridge in a way that left her no escape. But Monday? That was the day I found the thing that changed everything. A Venmo transaction. Public, stupid, and time-stamped. Sierra paid someone named JC with the caption, "Loan stuff." JC, a name I didn't recognize until I clicked his profile. Jason Carter, mutual friends, 3. One of them? My ex-boyfriend. The same guy Sierra swore she never even talked to after we broke up. Suddenly, things started to make sense. The access, the timing, the confidence. This wasn't just fraud, it was betrayal on every level, and now, it was war. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Jason Carter. The name felt radioactive. I hadn't thought about him in months, maybe a year, after everything that happened between us. The lies, the cheating, the slow erosion of trust. I had buried that chapter so deep I barely remembered the sound of his voice. But there he was, smirking on his Venmo profile photo, holding a Red Bull like it was a champagne flute, tagged in a payment by Sierra Clarkson with the caption, "Loan stuff." I didn't know what hurt more, that they were still in contact, or that they were laughing about my stolen life like it was a meme. I clicked on Jason's profile. His transactions were mostly public. Uber rides, pizza runs, rent split payments with 3 guys whose names I didn't recognize. but Sierra's name popped up again, twice in the past month. One caption said, "The ex for helping with documents." That was enough. I leaned back in my chair, brain spinning. This wasn't random. This wasn't just Sierra being reckless and selfish. This was a coordinated job. And Jason? He was either her accomplice or her next victim. I didn't want to go back there, to that part of myself that remembered Jason's smirk, the one that always came when he thought he was getting away with something. But I also knew him better than he thought. Jason was a follower, not a mastermind. A guy who liked to play dirty but didn't have the stomach for cleanup. And Sierra? She had the stomach for everything. I opened a folder on my desktop, one I'd saved back when we broke up. Screenshots, texts, DMs I'd promised myself I'd never look at again. Now, I needed them. There was one in particular, dated January 12th, 2023. Jason had texted me, "You always assume I'm the bad guy. Sierra was just being friendly. We weren't even alone." At the time, I had brushed it off. The name stung, but I believed him when he said they just bumped into each other. Now, it was all a lie. That bump was probably a setup, the start of something they'd been planning together, maybe even testing boundaries, seeing how much they could get away with before I noticed. Back then, I walked away from both of them. Now, I had a reason to walk back in. I decided to track him down. His Instagram was still public. Of course it was. Jason was addicted to validation, like it was caffeine. Latest story, a boomerang of him clinking glasses at some rooftop bar in Silver Lake. I recognized the background instantly. Hotel Caswell. He used to drag me there for date night when he wanted to look richer than he was. It was Saturday. If he was day drinking there now, chances were high he'd still be there by sundown. I got dressed, pulled my hair into a low bun, and changed into something neutral. Jeans, sneakers, a black top. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. I didn't want to confront him. Not yet. I wanted to watch. The rooftop was loud, trendy, everyone too busy performing coolness to notice the undercurrent of fraud swirling 2 tables to the left. Jason was exactly where I thought he'd be. Same baseball cap, same smug laugh, sitting across from a woman in oversized sunglasses. But not Sierra. This girl was younger, early 20s maybe, nervous, tapping her straw against the glass. They were talking about forms. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught the words. "Yeah, just needs a signature. Bank won't check too hard. You'll get the deposit in like 3 days. Easy cash, promise." I felt sick. He was doing it again. Or still, using people, coaching them through shady applications. Maybe it wasn't Sierra who dragged him into this. Maybe he dragged her, or maybe they were just 2 parasites who found each other. I left before he saw me, but I snapped a photo from the stairwell. Clear shot of him holding a folder with the Capital Frontline logo on the spine. Proof. That night, I called the fraud officer assigned to my case. His name was Mason. Nice guy. Patient. He'd been going through the motions with me for a week. But this time I didn't come with confusion. I came with evidence. "I think there's a larger ring involved," I told him. "Multiple names. One of them is Jason Carter. The other is Sierra Clarkson. I have visual proof of him coaching someone into a loan scam. I can send you the images." Mason paused. "You followed him?" he asked, surprised. Not illegally, I said. Public place, public behavior. You want to stop this or not? He didn't push back. He gave me his secure email. I sent everything. And for the first time since this started, I felt like I was ahead of them. But I wasn't done. Because knowing wasn't enough. I needed them to feel it. The way I felt when my credit score tanked. When I got that call from a bank that didn't know me but thought I was a criminal. When my own name started to feel foreign and fragile and poisoned. They needed a taste of that. So I made a plan. A bait. Sierra had always been obsessed with brand launches. Every month she had some new idea for a project. Some logo mock-up. A startup that never started. A scheme disguised as entrepreneurship. So I created one for her. A fake business. A fake website. A fake government loan opportunity for underrepresented women entrepreneurs. I built the site myself. Registered the domain. Empower Nest Ventures. Tagline. Funding women who build. I knew she'd fall for it. It was her language. Then I sent her the link. Not from me, of course. From a burner account. A female name she didn't know. Posing as a recruiter from a women's empowerment group. Subject line. Sierra, I think you'd be perfect for this. Inside the link, a tracker, and a form requesting full name, social, mailing address, and banking info. Not for a real loan, but to see what she'd type. I sent it and waited. It took 2 hours. Then, ding, submission received. Name, Natalie Monroe. SSN, my number. Address, mine from 2 years ago. Bank, mine. But the routing number was off by 1 digit. She was still using my identity. Still trying to milk the system. That was all I needed. I closed the laptop and stared out my window. For the first time in weeks, I felt something solid under my feet. I wasn't just chasing ghosts. I had names. I had proof. I had power, and the next move, it was mine. The submission came in at 2:14 a.m. I was already awake. Sleep hadn't really been a part of my routine since the day that $25,000 loan appeared in my name. But that night, I wasn't just restless. I was waiting. I opened the email. The form had been filled out completely. Every field, full name, Natalie Monroe. SSN, mine bank account, mine. Except the digits were slightly off, like she always did. Just enough to make it seem real, but accidentally untraceable. Signature, typed in lowercase. Natalie Monroe, it was pathetic, almost lazy. As if she'd done it so many times, she no longer cared about hiding the details. But what caught my eye wasn't the data. It was the IP address embedded in the form submission. Copied it and pasted it into the geolocator tool I'd installed 2 days prior. Burbank, California. That was a red flag. Sierra lived in Echo Park. At least she used to. Every address tied to her, from old Amazon orders to DMV records, pointed there. But this wasn't Echo Park. This was north, a different part of town. I checked again. Cross-referenced the IP with a local provider. The name that came back? Daniel Clarkson. Her brother. Daniel. Of course. We'd met once, at a birthday dinner years ago, when Sierra and I were still close. He was older, quiet, the opposite of his sister. Polite to a fault, almost stiff. He worked in cybersecurity, or at least that's what Sierra said at the time. I remember her laughing when he left early that night. He's allergic to socializing, she joked. Total robot, but he's good at hacking stuff. At the time, I thought she was just being a bratty sister. Now the joke felt like a confession she hadn't realized she was making. If Daniel was involved, that changed everything. I spent the rest of the night building a new timeline. All the breaches, my credit report, the bank account reroute, the signature replication, weren't just sloppy guesswork. They were surgical. Someone knew how to dig, how to ghost a digital trail, how to mimic my online behavior just enough to fool verification systems. This wasn't Jason's doing. He couldn't hack a Spotify playlist, let alone a secure server. And Sierra? She was clever, manipulative, shameless, but tech-savvy. No, she had someone. She had Daniel. It made a twisted kind of sense. He had the skills. She had the motive. Jason was the social middleman, looping in vulnerable people to front the loans, keeping everything muddy enough so that no one knew who was really in charge. They were a trio, each one playing a part. And I had been the test subject, the trial run, the let's see if this works girl. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. By the time the sun rose, I had a new plan. The bait had worked. But now I needed the trap to close, and I couldn't do it alone. I called Mason. The fraud officer had been helpful, sure, but I needed more than sympathy and case numbers now. I needed action. I needed leverage. Mason, I said, how deep? Do you guys go with multi-party fraud rings? He paused. What do you mean? I mean, this isn't just identity theft anymore. It's organized. I've got names, locations, and proof of multiple people using my credentials. Some in person, some remotely. If I give you everything, can you escalate this? Another pause. Then, we can involve federal investigators, but we'd need full cooperation and probable cause. Do you have documented intent to defraud from more than one party? I have a digital paper trail, and I'm about to get more. He sighed. Okay, I'll loop in our legal team. We set a time to meet, 2 days later, at the branch office in Glendale. In the meantime, I did something I never thought I'd do. I contacted Jason. It was simple. A message from a burner Instagram. Hey, need a favor, big payout, quiet job. You in? He replied in 8 minutes. Depends who you are, Lowell. I sent a photo. Just a blurry image of a folder labeled Empower Nest Ventures, lying on a marble countertop. Then I added, easy app, fake loan. Just need someone to sign it. We split the deposit 70-30. You just show up once and say the name. He didn't even hesitate. Send me the docs. Hook, line, idiot. I created the paperwork, meticulously fake, just like they used, to do with mine. The same formatting, the same bogus routing number template. I even added a fake address in Hawthorne and a fictional email trail from a bank rep named Kelsey. Then I asked him to meet in person. Neutral ground. The atrium of a co-working space downtown. Public, well lit, but quiet enough to talk. He showed up in a hoodie and sunglasses, like that made him incognito. I wore a blazer and held a clipboard, playing the role of project manager. You're late, I said, not even looking up. He shrugged. Traffic. He sat. I slid the folder across the table. Here's the packet. All you have to do is memorize the name and sign at the bottom when asked. The ID's already printed. We'll handle the rest. He flipped through it, chewing gum like a teenager. Easy, he muttered. Of course it is, I replied. He didn't realize I had a voice recorder in my purse, running the entire time. didn't notice that the pen I gave him to review the signature had a tiny hidden cam. He was too busy thinking about money, just like always. The moment he walked away, I called Mason. I got him, on record, signing on a fake name and confirming intent to defraud. "Perfect," he said. "Bring everything to the meeting. And Natalie?" "Yeah?" "This is turning into a full investigation. If you're serious about pressing charges, we'll need you ready to testify." I didn't even blink. "I want them all taken down. Jason, Sierra, Daniel, every last one of them." And I meant it. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done playing the victim. Back home, I sat at my desk, reviewing everything, organizing files, backing up copies, labeling folders. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, not from CreditWise, not from a burner account. A real number. Unknown, but local. I picked up. "Natalie?" a man's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Special Agent Reeve. I've been briefed on your case. We believe your identity was compromised by individuals connected to an ongoing fraud operation targeting over 20 victims." I froze. 20? At least. And here's the thing. We ran the IP address you flagged. The one tied to the Empower Nest bait? Yes? It wasn't just from Daniel Clarkson's home router. I held my breath. It pinged from a secure server registered to Bramley Tech Solutions. That name meant nothing to me, until he added, "It's a private firm where Daniel Clarkson is currently employed. His job title? System Security Consultant." My stomach dropped. He hadn't just helped Sierra. He had built the tools. They weren't improvising. They were scaling. And I had just torn the lid off something much bigger than a stolen credit score. The courtroom wasn't what I expected. I don't know why, but I had imagined something grand. Dark wood, rows of reporters, a dramatic air of tension. Instead, it was just beige. Beige walls, beige floors, beige chairs that squeaked when you sat. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and everything smelled faintly of disinfectant and stress. But none of that mattered, because sitting 5 feet away from me, across the room, were Sierra, Jason, and, yes, Daniel Clarkson. They didn't see me at first. Sierra was chewing gum, bored. Jason looked like he had just woken up from a nap in his car. And Daniel had that robotic stillness again, his expression unreadable. He sat perfectly upright, in a suit too expensive for a morning fraud hearing. His fingers locked together like a statue. I didn't realize I was gripping the arms of my chair until Mason leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" No, I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. This wasn't a full trial. Not yet. This was the preliminary hearing, a chance for the prosecution to lay out the skeleton of the case and determine whether it was strong enough to move forward. A judge, no jury, just testimony, evidence, and arguments. Agent Reeve was already seated, flipping through a file as thick as a college textbook. The folder I had built, the one with my recordings, screenshots, and annotated digital logs, was sitting in front of him. My fingerprints were all over this case, and soon, so would my voice. They called me first. I stood up, walked past Jason, who smirked, past Sierra, who rolled her eyes, and Daniel. He didn't even look up. "Please state your name for the record," the clerk asked. "Natalie Monroe," I replied. My voice didn't shake. 30 years old, resident of Los Angeles County. And then the questions began. Agent Reeve guided me through a calm, methodical process. My background, my relationship with the defendants, the initial discovery of the fraudulent loan. Then he got to the good part. Can you describe the methods used to lure you into signing financial agreements under false pretenses? I didn't sign anything, I said clearly. They used my data, my social security number, my address. Sierra accessed it through an old tax document I'd sent her during our roommate days. Jason played the face of the scheme. He helped submit applications with falsified digital consent. And Daniel... I paused, locking eyes with him for the first time. Daniel built the infrastructure, the scripts, the spoofed websites, the rerouted IP traffic. He made it all possible. Reeve nodded. Can you confirm this through material evidence? I can. I reached into my folder and handed over a USB drive. Voice recordings, metadata, a recreated login trail that ties Daniel Clarkson's work credentials to the fraudulent loan submission. A murmur rippled through the room. Even the judge leaned forward. Jason slouched. Sierra looked suddenly very interested in the floor. But Daniel? Still stone. Then came their turn. The defense attorney stood, a woman with expensive shoes and a voice, like she was late for lunch. She tried to undermine me, tried to paint me as paranoid. A woman hurt by a failed friendship, now looking to exact revenge. It would have worked if I didn't have receipts. I answered every question calmly, gave dates, cited file paths, quoted text messages. By the time she was done, even the court reporter looked like she wanted to hug me. Then something strange happened. Daniel Clarkson requested to speak, not through his attorney, directly. His lawyer looked horrified, but the judge allowed it. He stood, straightened his tie, and stepped forward. Your Honor, may I address the complainant directly? The judge hesitated, then nodded. Briefly, Daniel turned to me, for the first time, and said, Natalie, this wasn't supposed to happen to you. Time stopped. Even Sierra whipped her head toward him. Daniel continued, I helped build systems for identity duplication, yes, but I never targeted you. That was Sierra. She accessed the back end after hours. She used my tools without my knowledge. Jason was just the mule. He didn't know what half the terms meant. The courtroom went dead silent. You were our friend. Sierra told me you'd agreed to the loan. She said you were part of it. I didn't question it because she's my sister. A shiver ran down my spine. Sierra's mouth hung open. No, I didn't. He's lying, she blurted out, standing. He's just trying to save his job. The judge banged her gavel. Miss Clarkson, sit down. Now. Daniel didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on me. I didn't mean for it to go this far, and I'm sorry. It sounded genuine. But I didn't care. Sorry doesn't fix months of chaos, or credit destroyed, or jobs I couldn't apply to, or the shame I carried every time I tried to explain what had happened and people looked at me like I was the criminal. Didn't answer. I didn't have to. The hearing ended 20 minutes later. The judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence to proceed with a full trial. Sierra shouted something on her way out. Jason just walked away with his hands in his pockets like none of this mattered. But Daniel, he just sat down again. Quiet. Still. As if some invisible weight had been lifted, only to be replaced by something worse. Guilt. Real guilt. Outside, Mason caught up with me. That was one hell of a morning, he said. I exhaled. I'm just glad it's moving forward. He nodded, but then added something that made my heart skip. There's a new development. The forensic team traced a payment trail linked to another fake account in your name. It's from an overseas shell corporation. What? I blinked. I thought the scam was just domestic. Apparently not. It looks like someone tried to launder the original funds through a side channel, money that didn't end up with any of the 3 defendants. Which means he didn't finish. He didn't have to. This thing went deeper. Back at home, I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. But all I felt was tired, and underneath that, a growing suspicion. Had Sierra really acted alone? Or was someone else, someone bigger, someone smarter, pulling strings all along? I didn't sleep much that night. The idea that someone else, someone I didn't know, could be involved in this nightmare was hard to shake. The forensic team's tip about the overseas shell corporation nagged at me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. Who else could have my identity? And why? The next morning, Mason and I met at a small cafe downtown. He slid a thick file across the table. "Here's what we've got so far," he said. I flipped it open. Bank records, wire transfers, IP logs from the loan applications, and most chilling, a partial list of email addresses and phone numbers tied to the accounts. The thing that caught my eye was a recurring email domain. LexusGlobal.net. I'd never heard of it. Mason frowned. They're registered overseas, but it's a legit-looking company, sort of a front. A front for what? I asked. Your guess is as good as mine, he said. But this is where the money trail leads. I spent the next 3 days buried in research, Google searches, online business registries, domain lookups. I found a company called Lexus Global Solutions, supposedly a data management firm based out of a small office in the Cayman Islands. Their website was sleek but vague, no real contact info, just a form and a generic email address. The more I dug, the more it felt like I was staring into a black hole. Then I stumbled on something else. A LinkedIn profile for a man named Ethan Cole. He was listed as Lexus Global's CTO. Tall, clean-cut, mid-40s, with the kind of smile that looked like it was hiding something. His work history? A mix of high-level tech firms, some sketchy startups that disappeared, and a handful of private consulting gigs. Most telling, he'd once been involved in a data breach scandal. Nothing criminal, just a messy PR disaster. But that was years ago. I messaged Mason immediately. This guy might be our hidden player, I said. He agreed. We need to find out if Ethan Cole has any connection to the loan scam. The next step was tracking down a contact who could dig deeper than I ever could. Mason called in a favor with a private investigator he'd worked with before, a guy named Marcus. Marcus was a little rough around the edges, the kind of man who thrived in the gray areas. He promised to look into Ethan Cole's recent activities and his connections to Lexus Global. 2 days later, Marcus called. I found something. I braced myself. Ethan Cole's company isn't just a data firm. They specialize in identity masking and digital camouflage tech. Basically, they create fake digital footprints, perfect for hiding fraud. I exhaled. So he built the tools that made this possible? Looks like it. And get this. There's evidence Cole's been consulting with some offshore financial groups known for laundering. My stomach turned. This goes way beyond Sierra, Jason, and Daniel. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the list of people involved. Sierra, Jason, Daniel. They were all pawns. But Ethan Cole? He was the puppeteer. I wanted to scream. How could I have been so blind? how many others had fallen victim to this invisible network. I decided to confront the other 3 defendants about this new discovery. We arranged a meeting, mediated by Mason, at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop with a private back room. When Sierra, Jason, and Daniel arrived, their expressions were guarded. They looked like people who knew their world was collapsing. I didn't waste time. "I know about Ethan Cole," I said. "The guy behind Lexus Global, the real mastermind." Sierra's face paled. Jason shifted nervously. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "He's the one who designed the system you used," I continued. "You were just executing orders." Jason scoffed. "Easy for you to say, Natalie. You weren't the one pressured to keep quiet." I shook my head. "This isn't about blame. It's about truth. And stopping him." Daniel finally spoke. "If Cole's involved, it's a whole other level. We're dealing with a corporate criminal machine," Sierra whispered. "He's untouchable." That was the moment everything changed. We were no longer just victims. We were a team. An unlikely alliance forged from betrayal and a shared need for justice. Mason arranged a secure chat group for us to exchange information. Over the next weeks, Sierra, Jason, Daniel, and I pooled every scrap of evidence. We cross-checked transaction histories, traced IP addresses, and pieced together the extent of Cole's digital empire. Every new discovery made the case heavier, but our resolve stronger. One night, I received an encrypted message from an unknown sender. It was a file, dozens of emails and internal documents from Lexus Global. Someone on the inside was leaking information. I didn't hesitate. I forwarded everything to Mason and our legal team. The stakes were higher now. Cole wasn't just some distant figure hiding behind technology. He was watching, waiting. I knew then that taking him down would mean exposing an entire underground web of deceit. But I was ready, because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. We weren't just chasing shadows anymore. With the leaked documents from inside Lexus Global, things finally felt real, like we had a way in. But this was bigger than any of us imagined. Mason called a meeting at his office. I walked in, heart pounding, seeing Sierra, Jason, Daniel already there, their faces tired but determined. The air was thick with anticipation. Mason started. "These documents give us a blueprint. How Cole's company operates, how they launder money, create fake identities, manipulate credit data. It's a gold mine. But it's also a bomb," Jason added. "If they find out we have this, they'll come after us harder." I nodded. That's when Mason laid out the plan. We build a legal case around this. We go after Cole and Lexus Global on multiple fronts: fraud, identity theft, money laundering, conspiracy. I swallowed hard. The thought of dragging this out in court scared me, but what scared me more was letting him get away. Over the next week, we worked non-stop. Mason's legal team started drafting complaints and subpoenas. Sierra and Daniel dug deeper into Cole's network, tracking recent financial moves and shell companies linked to him. Jason and I focused on building a timeline. Every interaction, every loan, every email we could find. We needed to prove this wasn't just coincidence. The nights were the hardest. I remember one evening, alone in my apartment, scrolling through emails. There was a message from an anonymous source. "Be careful. Natalie, you're poking a hornet's nest." My phone buzzed again. Another text. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." A chill ran down my spine. I called Mason immediately. "We're stirring the hornet's nest," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed. "You've got to be careful. This isn't just a scam ring. It's organized crime." But I wasn't backing down. If anything, these threats fueled my fire. I thought about the people who had fallen victim. The families ruined. The lives upended. They didn't deserve silence. Then came the day we served the first subpoena. It was nerve-wracking. Mason drove us to a sleek downtown office building. We handed the papers to the receptionist, who didn't look fazed. But I knew somewhere behind those glass doors, someone was watching us. Weeks passed. Lexus Global didn't respond directly, but the pressure was mounting. Our phones kept ringing with unknown numbers. Strange cars appeared outside my building. Even my emails had suspicious attachments I dared not open. One night, Sierra called me frantic. "They're trying to freeze our accounts," she said. "Cole's network is fighting back." Daniel's voice came through on the line, calm but tense. "We need to go public," Mason warned us. Going public is risky. It could blow the case. But the alternative was worse. So we decided to leak parts of the evidence anonymously to the press. The reaction was immediate. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines screamed about a massive identity theft ring run by a shadowy tech firm. Public outrage exploded. Cole and Lexus Global were under the microscope. For a brief moment, it felt like victory. But the reality was harsh. We were more exposed, more vulnerable. One evening, as I sat by the window, watching the city lights, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "You think you're safe?" Think again. I or E. Stared at the screen, heart racing. But deep down, I knew this was far from over. We had made the first move. Now, it was time for the fight. My name is Natalie Monroe. I'm 30 years old. Before we dive in, if you followed my story so far and want to see how standing up against fraud can make a difference, please hit like and subscribe. Sharing this helps others who might be fighting their own battles with identity theft and injustice. The courtroom was colder than I expected. It wasn't just the air conditioning, it was the weight of everything on my shoulders. All those months of emails, threats, sleepless nights, and phone calls led here. Mason sat beside me, calm as ever, reviewing notes with Sierra and Jason hovering nearby. Cole and his legal team looked slick, confident, even smug. But I wasn't intimidated anymore. The trial opened with a harsh reality check. Mason laid out the evidence in painstaking detail. The fake loans, forged signatures, shell companies, and the entire web of deception Cole spun around Lexus Global. The judge listened intently. Each piece of proof was a brick in the wall we were building, a wall designed to keep people like Cole behind bars. But the fight was brutal. Cole's lawyers twisted facts, questioned witnesses, tried to discredit every piece of evidence. They called it a complex financial misunderstanding, not a crime. I sat through hours of cross-examinations, my nerves frayed, but my resolve unbroken. Outside the courtroom, the threats escalated. One night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart raced. Inside, nothing was stolen. But a chilling message was left on my kitchen table. A single business card with just one word scrawled on it in black. "Marker, stop." I reported it immediately. The police increased patrols around my place. Sierra and Jason took turns staying with me. No one was going to scare me off. The case dragged on for months. Media coverage grew. People started sharing their own stories of fraud and identity theft online. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. The story became bigger than me. Then, an unexpected ally stepped forward. A former Lexus Global employee reached out confidentially through Mason. She handed over internal emails and recordings, proving Cole had knowingly orchestrated the fraud ring. Her evidence was the missing piece. With this new bombshell, the tide turned. Lexus Global's defenses crumbled. Cole's smirk faded. The judge ordered immediate freezes on Cole's assets and opened a criminal investigation. The final day in court was surreal. I gave my testimony, voice steady despite the weight of everything. I didn't just fight for myself, I said, but for everyone whose lives were shattered by this. Verdict day came. Cole was found guilty of multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Lexus Global was fined millions and placed under strict federal oversight. I finally felt the weight begin to lift. My credit report was cleared, my name restored. But the real victory was knowing I had taken down a criminal empire. The battle had changed me. I wasn't the same woman who had nervously answered that first call from Capital Frontline Lending. I was stronger, wiser, determined to help others avoid the nightmare I lived through. Today, I volunteer with organizations that support identity theft victims. I speak publicly about the dangers of fraud and how to protect yourself, because if sharing my story saves even one person from this hell, it's worth every sleepless night. Fraud doesn't just steal money, it steals peace of mind, security, and trust. But you can fight back. You have to. Thank you for listening. Stay vigilant, stay strong, and remember, your identity is your most valuable asset. Protect it fiercely